I'm Chris Bussing. Welcome to my channel. I'm glad to have you here. At the core, this channel is committed to helping you reach your personal and professional potential. And we've got an incredible guest today, Joe Curcillo, who really does it all. And he's going to bring a new perspective to the table about interdisciplinary thinking, combining knowledge and skill sets from different domains to reach our full potential in life. This guy is a keynote speaker. He's advised the government. He's practically an oracle. He's a former judge. He's a mentalist. He's a woodworker. You see it on the thumbnail. He's done quite a bit. So guys, if you get value out of this video, which I assume you're going to, make sure to give that like button a love tap, because the YouTube algorithm loves that too, and will show this video to more people who could benefit from the message. And of course, man, I'm out of breath. Woo!
It's called high strung. It's what we do.
Yeah, exactly. And the final call to action before we dive in and turn it over to Joe is to subscribe to the channel for weekly interviews with inspiring folks like Mr. Curcillo. I don't mean to make you feel old there, Joe. But Joe, thanks for joining. How's your day going so far today?
My day has been absolutely perfect. I can't complain. I ran in 27 directions and loved every one of them.
It's interesting because my mom was actually telling me, Chris, you need to look into the concept of being a generalist rather than diving into one specific niche. Being a generalist is going to help you be more successful. And she recommended a book, and it sounds like that's something that is within your wheelhouse, the generalist advantage. Like, what does it mean to be a generalist? And is that the correct term that I'm using?
Yeah, no. Generalist is, I use a generalist because that is what I aim at my entire life. If you want, I can explain a little bit of how I believe it works. Okay. First of all, a generalist is someone that is experienced in a multitude of things. There's a great phrase out there called T-shaped professional. That's someone that's experienced in a number of things, but they have one deep level of knowledge. And then there's generalists that are your philosophical thinkers. My position has always been, for me, the more I know, the more valuable I become to people. So understand that it started for me as a journey where I wasn't satisfied just taking one lane and running with it to perfection. So to me, everything that has ever happened in this world, whether we're looking at Steve Jobs, whether we're looking at Jeff Bezos, the bad word, Elon Musk, all of these people have focused on multiple lanes. They're not just programmers. They're not just businessmen. They're not just retail people. They're not just computer people. They focus on a lot of different things because here's what happens. When you work in multiple lanes, you bring to each and every lane a different level of value. Because if someone is, let me just say, for instance, someone is a lawyer, okay, which is what I was for years. When you're a lawyer, you can become an expert in the law. But then when you step into a courtroom and you have to talk to a jury, and that jury is carpenters, plumbers, electricians, business people, corporate executives, CEOs, whoever's on that jury, you have to be able to talk their language. Well, if you've lived in their lanes, your communication skills increase and you become a better lawyer. At the same time, if you're an accountant and you're keeping numbers, but you've got other areas of experience, you are growing in other areas and you bring to all of your clients added value because they see things. A generalist is someone who has multidisciplinary skills, utilizes the intersection of those lanes for great things. Hello, puppy.
Perfect time that someone's knocking on my door and my puppy is barking, but I'm going to mute myself for now, and I'd love to hear you continue this thought.
That's all right. So the ability to think across silos is what makes people more valuable. It increases your ability to think, your ability to problem solve, and it's those magical intersections of disciplines that the absolute specialist misses. Now, let me tell you, I love specialists. There's a great place for them. I don't want a generalist doing open heart surgery on me. But I do want to know that the person that is doing the open heart surgery is someone that can communicate with me, because at least they've lived a little bit of life outside of medicine. Being multidisciplinary is not just thinking, it's about taking action, getting things done, living in multiple lanes, and doing many different things. And the more you do, the more value you bring. I mean, that's the short version of what I look at.
What a great illustration, using some specific examples of a judge being able to put themselves in the shoes of a carpenter. And I want to dig into your story, being a generalist, the different hats you've worn, and some real world examples of how you've been able to innovate and be a trusted advisor to individuals that you've consulted. I will say thank you to the people that have shown up currently. Thank you for your time and attention. To the people who show up in the future as this floats out in the YouTube sea. We've got Tom Singer saying Joe is awesome. Joe, I think you know Tom. Tom, thank you for introducing me to Joe as a new mentor and an inspiration. We've got Des, who's shown up. Des, good to see you. She said, now my dogs are barking too. Well, what are the chances? I think I know who it is. My buddy Jay. Shout out to Jay. One of my peers, a great guy, but I think he sometimes he'll drop by without any warning. But hey, that's what's fun about the live.
Hi, Tom. You're great. I know you, Tom. I don't know you, Des. So I'll say hi to Tom. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, Des is awesome, and I told her I was bringing you on, and she was super excited. But Joe, let's talk about the hats you wore. I want to hear your backstory, because when I heard it at National Speakers Association, it was very interesting.
Yeah, let me start by saying this. Understand that I admit that somehow my life is what I call controlled ADD. I like to do different things, and I like to experience different things. I can't stay in a lane. Aside from typical jobs as a kid working in a fast food restaurant, mowing lawns and all of that, when I first got a job outside of like something where I was going to make a major commitment to do a job, I started doing construction and cabinetry making. I learned to work with wood. After a period of time, I was in college studying engineering, and I got offered a job in a engineering firm doing building inspection. And I love telling the story because it's just how I live. Is I was doing soil inspection, and I was checking compaction of highways and compaction of the road. After 2 years, I was in law school, and I called my boss and I said, hey, I'm ready to go to work this summer. And he said to me, Joe, I got bad news. I don't have work for you. And I said, what do you mean you don't have work? You told me to call you. And he said, no, the only thing I have is structural steel, and you're scared of heights. And I simply said, Don, I am more scared of poverty than I am of heights. Ooh. And he said, hired. That decision is what has guided me through most of my life. I have always known that if I was not flexible and willing to move between lanes and do new things, I would not get rich. I knew I was going to fail. There's a lot of people that talk about maintaining separate columns of your business so that if one column falls, the rest remains standing. I have been that way in life, in the whole. That is just how I roll. And by the way, for those that hear me, yes, I did walk 46 stories in the air on 6-inch beams to make sure they were in tight.
Wow. Did you have support? Like, did you have a thing like holding you, or?
Oh, no, that stuff pulls you off and makes you get hurt. So no, we took it off as soon as OSHA left.
Dude, I'm like nervous thinking about that right now.
Wait, now let me tell you, and I'm going to help you understand fear. Okay.
Okay.
6 inches of steel above the city of Philadelphia, knowing that if I fall, I'm going to die. That didn't scare me. What scared me was when I came off the steel, I went to work at a department store at a cosmetics counter selling women's makeup. Fear was that the iron workers would come into the store and see me selling lipstick. Wow. That is what scared me.
Oh gosh. Oh my gosh, man.
I mean, but you understand, it was always I had to do something different. So when I got off the steel, I got a job in a department store at nights, and I was working selling makeup.
Selling
And
lipstick.
yes, they had an opening and they offered me the job. So I took it. Then I started doing magic shows for kids' parties. I finished law school, got a job as a prosecutor, continued doing magic shows. In high school, I had been an artist, so I actually had put my paints away and stopped painting. I only started painting about 3 or 4 years ago again. But all throughout, I was making furniture for my home because I had been a cabinet maker and I learned how to do it. And I didn't want to lose those skills. Everything I've ever done, I've tried to make sure I keep some part of me alive. And I got to be honest, it just works for me because even when my law firm was at its best and it was thriving, I built a house that I'm sitting in. I was my own general contractor. And there's so much reward when you can do something and say, I did that.
Mm.
And when I cross over. So what else do I do? Currently, I am a tracker for a private investigator out of Los Angeles. I am a keynote speaker. I coach CEOs. And one of the things I focus on with CEOs is how to get their people to become more multidisciplinary, meaning if you've got multiple silos in the business, they're all going to run. But when people get together and work together and they communicate across lanes, better things happen. And I mean that there's just examples in history that I love to joke about, but you look at everything that's ever been a major invention, it's because somebody crossed into somewhere they didn't belong. And then great things happen.
So shout out to Frank Candy. He said, I have seen Joe's artwork.
Ah,
It's fantastic. All caps.
yeah.
Joe, you have a big fan base here showing up live today.
I feel love. I feel love.
I asked Frank in the comments, is it oil painting? My mom's a professional oil painter, but what medium do you use?
I am acrylic on canvas.
Okay.
And for anybody that wants to see the artwork, I posted on my page at notsoblankcanvas.com.
Ooh, I like that. Good play on
Yes.
words. And you know what's
Yes.
funny, Joe? I've been quoting you to random people that, at least to you, but friends of mine, I've been saying, build a Parthenon. Since I met you, which was not long ago, I've quoted you like 3 or 4 times. Can you highlight that again? I mean, you already kind of hit on it, but it sounds like,
Yeah, and let me say that is not my I didn't create that concept. I learned it along the way. But if you look at the Parthenon, it stays standing because there's multiple columns that keep that facade held up. If one column falls away, there's other columns that will stay alive. And if your business has multiple avenues, if your business has multiple lanes, they're not all going to collapse at one time. And I say that with absolute certainty because I built a business model that allows me to have multiple interests. So even when COVID came and the pandemic hit, yes, my speaking business, I didn't want to be virtual, so it disappeared for a while. But my consulting of corporate entities and my consulting of government took off like wildfire because they didn't know what to do. And I was doing crisis management for them. Something stayed alive. It wasn't that I was all of a sudden allowing the world to cave in on me. I just sat back and said, all right, what lanes are still working?
can you tell a little bit of the story of how you advise the government? I mean, at least when we were talking over some drinks at NSA, I was just fascinated. It was like you were an oracle and predicted it.
Well,
But just give us a little bit of a story.
well, I don't know if I was an oracle. I think I was pretty sick. No, I came back. I came back from Las Vegas, and while I was there, I was at a restaurant called Ping Pang Pong, which is phenomenal in the Gold Coast
What a name.
Casino. And most of the patrons in the restaurant are always Chinese and Asian. And the table next to me on either side, they were discussing the fact that people back home were dying. And this is in January. I came home from Vegas and was laid up for about a week, sick as a dog. I My doctor still believes I had COVID, but we didn't know how to test for it back then. And when I finally came around, I started adding two and two, and I said to the chairman of our county government, I said, something bad is coming. Something really big is coming, and you need to be ready for it. And they brought me in to help come up with a concept of a plan or some way to make it work and see what this is I was talking about. So I had a team of people that started pulling together all of the data that they could get off the news. If you remember back then, there was just scattered stories about something bad happening in Asia and China, and nobody really knew what was coming, but it was just getting. I want to say it was just starting to get some traction, and they started looking at me saying, "Are we ready for this?" And what we had to identify was if something happened and we either lost people, people couldn't work, people couldn't come in, who was going to provide services to the community, and what would we do if we lost percentages of the 1,500 employees that they have in our county. And I laugh because the day the governor announced that they were shutting down the state because of COVID, I was basically called and said, okay, now we believe you. But at that point, we had already talked to most of the high end directors and everybody else, so we knew what would happen. And frankly, during that whole period, to the dismay of my wife and daughter, I started heading into the government offices almost every day because I had worked in different aspects of county government through my life in different places. So I knew how a lot of it ran. And I was filling in some blanks for them so they could keep things going. And to be honest with you, I laugh about it because even though I did do some virtual speaking and I did other consulting work, the initial shutdown for me was a bit of a blur because I was so busy. And by the
That
way,
is,
I never did get COVID again until a year and a half later. And even when I got it again, it my joke is I had COVID. I'm sitting here at my desk, my family's upstairs, and they're sick as a dog testing negative, and I'm testing positive, and they got mad at me, so they threw me out because I was positive and not sick. But the truth is, the reality of it is for me, that ability to dive into something and say something's going to happen, I wish I was wrong, but I guess I want to say that's part of being a generalist, part of being multidisciplinary is I wasn't looking in just one lane because I looked at the whole thing, meaning conversations of people, my own condition, what I started to see on the news, what I started to read, and all of it came together, and we were able to move forward and effectively keep everyone alive and happy. And it was a difficult time, but it was that ability to juggle that made it happen.
so how is multidisciplinary thinking approach or influence your approach to problem solving and decision making?
Sure. Um, I want to say it affects every aspect of it.
Yeah.
Okay. And here's why. And I'm just going to use me. So, as a lawyer, I was trained for a very logical form of thinking. Um, I was trained to analyze situations and make determinations as to how to communicate them to people. Okay. Because I was a trial lawyer, by the way. So I took very complex legal issues and I had to explain them to people. Well, that's easy enough if you can speak perfect English. But I laughed because I'm a street kid from Philadelphia. So for me, complex words and Latin phrases weren't going to cut it. So I knew that I could simplify things based on my upbringing and understanding. But then, having been a civil engineer, details were everything to me.
Mm.
I needed to look for the details. So to solve the problem, communicating it's part of it, understanding it, seeing all the details, and being an artist, I saw the big picture. I see the big picture, and I can look at it, and I can then describe to people what I see, and I accept all the details I get. And for instance, I know based on everything I've done, I don't have all the answers, but I can identify the holes so I know who to bring in to help me fill out the holes. Okay. And then, as I jokingly said, I was an iron worker walking on 6 inches of steel. So no matter what they throw at me, I don't panic. No matter how bad things get, I keep a level head. My hero has always been the wolf from Pulp Fiction. Harvey Keitel's character comes in a bloody, horrible situation and just wants a cup of coffee. That calm temperament is something that I have learned from being in many disciplines, and solving problems is a combination of all of that. It's how it all merges together. It's how it all blurs together, and being able to recognize where things intersect. That's where the magic happens and the solutions occur. So I want to say it's the communication skills and analytical ability of the lawyer, precision of the engineer, the big picture of the artist. Okay. And if you will, the ability to construct the final project of having been a carpenter. I just look at everything that way, and then the problem starts to make sense.
Wow.
And by the way, let me say, my careers, I want to make this clear to your listeners. This is how it works for me in my careers. But I want to tell you, the people that are listening to this, people that are wondering, oh my God, I don't have time to learn a whole lot of careers. I don't have time to do it. No, all of the things you have ever done, you need to embrace them. And I love talking to people and pulling out of them things they have done that they forgot they did. But if you remember every job you've ever had, any career move you've ever made, every relationship you've ever had, all of that will make you a better problem solver if you allow it to. So it's not just my career's work for me, but every individual has this ability. But you said early in the conversation that your mom told you to look into being more of a generalist. Yes. Well, a lot of us were told by our parents, pick a lane, pick a specialty.
Yeah.
And people went to school and wanted to learn one thing. And what they didn't realize was there was a whole world out there that they need to grab onto and learn, because that will make them better. So everybody listening, embrace who you are and what you have done in your life. And you might find all of a sudden there's a new discipline you want to explore tomorrow and learn something different. And it's time to do that.
You know what, Des, who's listening in, I believe she's still here. She's a massage therapist by day, which I think is such a cool thing, and what a gift. And she's exploring sales. She actually is exploring other opportunities. And I feel like there's an opportunity to bring a unique perspective from being a massage therapist to whatever she ends up doing and expanding to. And so that's something that just strikes me and that excites me. And for me, being in sales, I chose this path because I feel like it can intersect with other things as I figure out, like, what if I want to start a business? Or I had a lawyer who was in sales for 10 years and it made him a better lawyer. So it's definitely sparking ideas for me, as you shared, Joe. And I wanted to ask,
can I interrupt to address, can I address Des for a minute? Just you're using an example. Des going into sales, Des is you said a massage therapist. Okay. Yes. A massage therapist is gifted at making people relax using their hands. But every massage therapist I've ever met is also focused and able to relax people with their words. And to go into sales and be able to talk to people, just the discipline of knowing how to talk to people calmly and making them relax and feel good And then Des just posted a mom, an esthetician, a foodie, and a writer. See how it all comes together, but that's where the communication happens. And that's where Des is obviously finding her magic.
That is so cool. And, this channel is, I have a shtick, personal transformation through the lens of tech sales. I think that, tech sales is dynamic and lucrative. It's a good place to sell. And sales teaches skill sets that are useful. You build connections, and it's a place to put mindset, like being a generalist, into practice. And I'm curious if you have any thoughts, because I feel like I could throw any bone your way or question and you could run with it. But in order to be a better seller, do you think there's like interesting outside activities, whether it's woodworking, painting, that someone could take on that would actually serve them as a seller? I mean, you already mentioned being like a massage therapist and how that could apply, but any other ideas?
Well, I'm going to say anything. And here's why. When you meet new people, if you're simply talking to them and I'm trying to sell them this pen, I'm missing the boat. But if I meet the person and I find out that their interest is in, I don't know, make up something. Their interest is in tech, and I can talk tech, I'm going to bond with them much quicker and much faster than if I talk about how great this pen is. If I want to talk to somebody and I find out, for instance, the other night I was at a cocktail reception. I was talking to a potential client who was a CEO. He and I are having a very nice conversation. His wife then comments that she saw one of my paintings, and she is an artist. Within 5 minutes, I became the CEO's wife's best friend. And she was very uncomfortable being at that meeting, that event. I gave her an outlet, and it was the CEO who looked at me and said, why don't you and I just set up an appointment in my office and we'll talk, because we're not going to get it done today. And I hugged his wife and we left. Well, the appointment's going to happen. Why? Because it was something completely different that I used as a connection. So everything fits, but also think about it. The people you are meeting, if you can show them love, because one thing about sales, let me face a reality. When you walk into a room, who is the most important person in the room? The person you're talking to,
Yes.
Right? Yes. That person is the most important person in the room. And if you can connect with their soul and talk about something that is important to them, they will remember you as the most important person because they talked about themselves. So I have, and I love my ability to do that. And I noticed Frank just wrote down other things that I do because
quick shout out. Frank said Joe left out a few titles. So husband, father, grandfather, musician, IT analyst, foodie, chef, winemaker, Indian chef, and a race car driver. Actually, I mean, you don't seem like an actual human being, Joe. Like it's like super.
I have controlled ADD, Chris.
I definitely have ADD too. So I feel like you're an example of who I could be. But anyways, that's unbelievable. Yeah.
I want to put so you understand what I'm saying to you is, don't think of it just from sales. Think of it as a human connection. The generalist is going to connect better because here's the deal. Let's face reality. If you are a chemist and you walk into a room, how many people are you going to connect with and bond with because you are a chemist? 0. But if you walk into the room and, for instance, Des is a massage therapist, a mother, an esthetician. She's a foodie. She's a writer. Do you think she's going to connect with people in the room?
She's going to find something.
Yeah. She's going to connect because she can have dialogue with them. And that will make your network extremely strong and powerful.
Man. And how about Tom Singer, who's on here, who speaks about the power of networking? What a nice little synergy. Yeah. And what's illuminated for me, Joe, is that by expanding who we are and our skill sets and our passions, like we can just connect with more people, find common ground. And that's the gateway to influence. I mean, Chris,
frankly, that's how we met. Why? I love people. I want to know what everyone's doing. So when you came over, we started talking and we connected because my interest in you is as sincere as my interest in every one of my careers.
Mm.
That is how I live. So, we connected. I love listening to what you're doing and seeing someone young that is that, I call it adventurous in your career and your business career to do great things.
That means a lot, Joe. And I noticed your curiosity, and that's what made you, arguably, I would say, and we had some incredible people, the most fascinating person in the room was that you were fascinated in me. So I feel like that you've dropped a lot of nuggets, and we still have got some ways to go in the conversation, which I'm excited about. But that in and of itself was a golden nugget. And I wanted to ask, continuing to riff off of the concept of how can we practically start to develop ourselves as generalists. I'm saying that the rest of us. And what I'm hearing is that innately we're more of a generalist than we realize. And there's probably some other tips to kind of cultivate that. But any other thoughts on things you might not have touched on yet in terms of practical tips to become more of a generalist for the rest of us?
Yeah, let's do that because we didn't really hit on that.
Okay.
And it's I guess I want to call it an advanced look at a book that'll be coming out later this year, which is
Oh.
The Generalist Advantage. But what I want to focus on is one of my favorite parts of the book is what I call the 6 C's of learning. Okay.
Okay.
Let me start by saying something. People have to grasp this. When you had to learn in school, it's because a teacher made you learn. They told you what to learn, when to learn, and how to learn, and we all hated it. My life has been me deciding what I'm going to learn, when I'm going to learn it, and how I'm going to learn it. I finish school and now create my own world. So, first of all, the first C I tell people, you've got to have a commitment. Decide you want to do something, you want to learn it, and commit to it. Second, block the time on your calendar. Make sure your calendar is set up so you can learn something new. And then, this is important. The next one is what I call the controlling question. Sit down and define exactly what it is that you want to learn. Everyone has heard of the Pareto principle. Okay. The Pareto principle is that 20% of the people do 80% of the work. Okay. 20% of a topic is 80% of what you need to know. Narrow how much you want to know. For instance, if you want to learn how to be a carpenter, don't learn how to frame a house and do the cabinets. Just pick the cabinetry. If you don't have time to go build a house or work with one of the charities that builds homes, focus on something smaller. Build a trinket box. Build something small. Learn to work with the wood. Decide this is what I'm going to learn. So the controlling question is, what is it exactly you want to learn, and what do you want to do, and figure out the scope of that. Then you chunk the learning. There's something called the Pomodoro principle, which says you sit down and work on something for 20 minutes or 25 minutes, and then you do something else and you come back. You set down blocks of time to learn. And when you take the blocks of time to learn, you pick, I want to learn how to work with nails today. I want to learn how to work with the sander. I want to know how to work. Narrow down what parts of it you want to learn to work with. Now, you've got a commitment to do it. You've got time on your calendar. You know what you want to learn, and you've blocked it into your own course. You're making your own course syllabus. And then comes the next two things. And these are the most important: collaboration and connections. Find someone to work with. Find someone who wants to share that with you so you're doing it together and you're learning together, and make connections so that you can find a mentor or someone to teach you how to do what you're doing. And frankly, that connection, depending on what it is you're learning, can be something as simple as going onto YouTube and searching videos to find woodworkers. But make connections with someone who's going to show you how to do it. So whatever career or whatever it is, and I'm not talking about getting master's degrees. I joke about it. One of the things I'm learning how to do now is work with liquid resin to make a resin tabletop with olive wood in it. Okay, because I found olive wood. What am I going to do with it? I'm going to make a tabletop.
When life gives you olive wood, make an olive table. It's like life gives you lemons, a different version.
Yeah, but you understand. So first I set aside time to understand it. I block time off to learn everything. I know I just want to make tabletops. I don't want to make big, giant conference tables. I just want a 24-inch tabletop.
Yep.
I took the time. I learned. I made some coasters to practice. I chunked it. I made this. And then I reached out to someone I knew that was doing crafts, and I worked with her. So now I understand how to work. And I studied YouTube videos. So within a week, I'm going to be making a tabletop. I have no idea how it's going to look. But I can tell you this, there's not much about that tabletop I don't know right now. And that's what we do.
So, I mean, first of all, Des, thanks for your participation. And she really has been a superstar. And I feel like this is really resonating with her. But she asked about the book. I said it's the Generalist Advantage. When is it coming out? Because I'm going to want to link it, Joe. And I'm going to get it when it comes out. But
okay. So I'll just say this. It will be out. I'm hoping by the end of the year. My editor has it. We've got a lot of little work to do on it. However, if you want, one of my original books is not on Generalist, but it's called Getting to Us, which it's over whatever side of the room it's on.
Getting to Us.
Getting to Us. If people want to scan a QR code right now, if you scan that QR code, it will give you a chance to get onto my mailing list. And once you're on my mailing list, you will get email from me. And let me say this. The book is not coming out yet, but videos, articles, and all kinds of magic stuff is coming out in my emails every 2 weeks. I don't blur people. I don't blast people every day. It's every 2 weeks. You
told me that you actually personally write these posts. And the good news is this is going to post immediately to the YouTube. And so you hold that up for a good amount of time. So people will be able to go back to this video and scan the QR code. For example, my phone wasn't on the ready, but I need to make sure I get signed up for your email list. So that is perfect. Getting to Us, guys, check that out. And of course,
Getting to Us was a book I wrote about 5 years ago. It's the one I've spoken on for the last 5 years. And the whole focus of the book is how to get everyone on the same page so your team works as one unified team. So it's a fun read. There's 4 chapters of it for free. If you sign up for my list, you get 4 chapters for free. And let me tell you, as far as I'm concerned, they're the best 4 chapters of the book. So you don't even need to buy the rest.
So, yeah, I mean, that's, Des said, thanks for the code. And
you're welcome, Des.
And so I was going to ask you, let's see, speaking of ADD, I want to take this conversation in a handful of directions.
Yeah.
Okay, here's what I wanted to talk about Getting to Us, if you could just give us a little teaser. But before that, I noticed the 80-20 rule really stood out to me for tech sales. And a lot of this group wants to get into tech sales, at least as a next stage in their lifelong, career development journey. And I'm selling cloud computing, hundreds of tools. It's super technical, AWS, Google Cloud, Analytics, DevOps, et cetera. And you just struck a chord with me. 80-20 rule. I just need to know 20, or any of us, like 20% of the information is probably going to make us what we call technically dangerous. Now, we have technical gurus and experts that we can bring in to assist with customers, but going any deeper actually might not be the best use of our time. So I feel like that 80-20 principle is actually very relevant to tech sales when you're selling something very technical.
Oh, Pareto's is applicable to a lot of things. It's phenomenal. It's the whole concept of Pareto. It was used for years in business, saying basically 20% of the people in the company are doing 80% of the work. And if you look at most of what's around you, you find that. What I have found is that 20% is enough to make you dangerous. And let me also tell you that knowing 20% and knowing there's somebody out there that knows 100%, it tends to make you sometimes feel like you have some, oh my God, I'm not good enough, or maybe I don't know enough. No, here's what you know. You know enough when to bring in the expert. You know enough to get by, and you know enough of when you've got to bring in the expert. You know when you have to reach out to somebody else to help you. And that is, to me, very important in being a generalist, because I don't have imposter syndrome, because I know I can surf along and do the best with anybody. But then when that is happening, I also know that if something bad is about to happen, if I need more information, somewhere along the way, I have found the experts that I can bring in to fix it. So you don't have to know everything to be an expert. I'm going to tell a quick story, but I did a prosecution once, and I was trying to figure out when a body rolled down a hill towards the stream, because there was questions about what time of day it occurred and blah, blah, blah. And I'm out there at the scene looking, and there was an old man sitting on the bank, and he was fishing. And I asked him if he remembered the morning when they found the body, and he said yes. And I said to him, when, do you know when the body came down the hill? Do you have any idea? And he said, no, they never asked me, but I knew it came down in the early morning. And I said, how did you know that? And he said, because see all those weeds? They all were standing up when I saw the body. And I said, what does that mean? He said, rolling down the hill, the body would have knocked the weeds down. But when the sun's up long enough, the body was down there. When the sun was up long enough, the weeds stood back up.
Wow.
And I looked at this little old man, and I realized this fisherman was what I later in court called an expert on the flora and fauna of the Susquehanna Valley. He was an expert because he understood how the plants were.
Wow.
Nobody was going to take him on for that. And
that's such a good story.
And it's great to feel that and embrace people who have some level of amazing expertise.
So I feel like I'm having a breakthrough in that as a top seller in enterprise technology, selling to big corporations, these transformative deals, being a generalist is really what you're doing. You are a quarterback of resources, bringing in the right resources at the right time. It could be executives, business value architects, industry experts, technical solution architects. You could bring in product leaders for specific products. And you just need to be able to go in and connect through empathy. And like being a generalist, you probably have more ways to find common connections. And I'm doing that all the time. And then understand their personal goals and challenges and organizational goals and challenges. And then, just be that quarterback and generalist. So I just feel like, Joe, I didn't even realize how relevant being a generalist would be, but I realize it really applies to everything. And it also applies to being a CEO. And I would say that sales is a good training ground for a CEO mindset. You need to be accountable for results. You need to manage a strategy for a territory, manage technical people. And so I want to tie this into a question.
And you got to love people.
You got to love, yeah, for sure. The question is, you work with a lot of CEOs, you advise them. And what are some of the common challenges you're seeing with CEOs that you help address? Are there common threads, or is it maybe they all have different problems? But I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Sure. I think that if I had to say a common problem, a lot of people and I don't want to just say CEOs, COOs, C-suite people, if it gets right down to it, they get so caught up in what they're doing every day that sometimes there is a lack of connection to humans. And I'm thinking right now, I am not working with an individual. I wish I was, but I won't be, who is the CEO of a fairly large company. And he took over within the last 6 months. And I am hearing from people on the streets that they are feeling neglected already. And the reason is he's so caught up in himself that he is failing to communicate with people so that they will feel the love and feel like they're part of the company. So instead, they're starting to feel like, what I say is, they start to feel like cogs in a wheel. So sometimes I'm just there to remind the leaders, you won't be a leader if you don't have people. They're not cogs. They're not just parts of a machine doing something. They are human beings who need to belong and need to get something done. So making sure that that CEO, that COO, or even that director is able to communicate what they are thinking in their head to make the person feel like they are important, valid, and part of the process is really what makes things happen. So sometimes it's that simple.
Could you share a success story with a company, pick any that you want, where you applied multidisciplinary approach to provide some type of solution to a problem?
Sure, absolutely. I'm sitting here going, okay, pick one.
I know, I'm sure.
No, it's for instance, and I can use this. I'm going to go. So let me take back to it. We got a situation where I'm going to go back to the beginning of what I call multidisciplinary teams. I don't know how familiar some of your listeners are with the concept of a multidisciplinary team. Multidisciplinary teams began in the medical world because they brought people from multiple disciplines together to troubleshoot problems. Because you had a cancer doctor here, you got a heart doctor there, and you've got um, a venous expert here, and they're all discussing and they're figuring out how to fix a problem. That's where it started. So one of my favorite examples was one where I was working with a law firm, and they were trying a case, and instead of just sitting there and saying, oh, we need to hire this, we need to hire that, by bringing together people from the insurance companies, the healthcare provider, uh, representative of the prison, and a few other different groups sitting at a conference table, all of a sudden, the lawyers on the team realized they were running down a rabbit hole because they had forgotten that all of these components existed, and it started to make sense to everybody. And all of a sudden, I remember when the lawyer looked across at me and said, oh my God, wait a minute, I wasn't thinking this. And all of a sudden, his case started coming together because sitting in that room was a prison doctor. And the prison doctor commented on something that the other doctors had missed because they were so used to having what I call patients that they catered to. The prison doctor was actually very rigid and structured because he doesn't have to baby his patients. They come only when they get permission to come see him. They can't call him in the middle of the night. So he has a very different approach. But here's the cool part. He identified problems faster than everyone else at the table because his windows were limited. And when they started to realize how he was doing that, the lawyer looked and he went, oh my God, wait a minute, something's making sense here. And he realized that his client actually had made the right decision very quickly, but did it for all the right reasons. And every expert in that room was available to testify to help bring it all together. That was one of my favorite moments because the lawyer just felt like a champion all of a sudden. And really what it was him listening to all these people. On the other hand, another situation where one of my clients, and this is kind of simple and brain dead, but he was having trouble with his C-suite, and he was feeling like they were all in, I want to say they were in their silos, they were hunkered down, and they weren't expanding or growing. And he couldn't get them to become more creative. So the tech side was pure tech. The sales side was pure sales. The processing was pure processing. And they weren't working together. And he and I were having lunch one day, and I laughed because I didn't get paid for this. It was just me going off the cuff. I said, why don't you appoint so-and-so as a chief innovation officer?
Oh,
And he
interesting.
goes, what's that? I go, he's the only one that's been in every one of those departments. I met him. He's worked in processing. He worked in sales. He's been in the C-suite. He's been in everything. Make him your chief innovation officer. He can talk to all of the departments. About 3 months later, I was having lunch, and the guy said to me, I guess I should have paid you for that advice. And I said, why? He said, because I made him a chief innovation officer. I wasn't even sure what it would do, but it shook up the rest of the C-suite. And everybody started working together, and he put together a team of people that fixed a lot of our communication issues. So
Wow.
I wish I gotten paid for that, but
yeah, go ahead.
It was just an off the cuff thing of this person's what it is I recognized the one guy in the company who was completely and totally multidisciplinary.
Is that what innovation is? Because I always wonder, I see that when I reach out from a tech sales perspective, chief innovation officer, and I actually think of using technology just, they're good, they're tech driven, and they're implementing AI and ML and things like that. But is innovation really actually being like multidisciplinary? How do you define it?
As we approach the top of the hour, that is a perfectly happy place to end, because that is absolutely what innovation is. Innovation, and we can talk about Clayton Christensen's disruptive innovation and everything. I could do that for another hour, but I won't. I won't right now. But let me say this. The way innovation works is when things come together that were unexpected. Okay? Now, I'm going to tell you a story just real quick, because it's one of my favorite things. Was a guy, and I love this name, Otto Rohwedder. Nice. Otto Rohwedder was born in the 1800s. Otto Rohwedder became a jeweler by apprentice. He eventually opened 3 jewelry stores, was bored out of his skull, making jewelry, working with the machines, said I hated it. He went to optometry school, got his optometry degree, and then decided he didn't want to do that. So he sold his jewelry stores, gave up his optometry degree, and decided he was going into the baking industry. And everyone in the baking industry told Otto, what are you talking about, man? You're talking about changing the way bread is made. Bread has been made the same way since the Bible. And Otto Rohwedder said, no, someday people will want sliced, packaged bread. Here's a bread slicing machine. And he changed. How many of us on this call? We've all touched a piece of sliced bread in the last couple of days.
I've got some over my fridge over there to my right.
Bingo. That was where everything changed. And what Otto was able to do was bring into the industry something completely different. And it changed the way it is. And by the way, we talk about innovation, and I see Frank wrote innovation's process of turning creativity into profit. And that's, yes, Frank was with Disney. He was an Imagineer.
Frank, you seem like an inspiration as well. So shout out.
Frank is one of my dearest friends, and Frank rocks. But the bottom line is the whole concept, and I say this because here's what happened. He kept pushing, and nobody wanted the sliced bread. And then all of a sudden in 1926, oh my God, look, there's a new invention. It's called a toaster. And you can put it in your house, but you need to have bread that's a standard size. And Otto Rohwedder was sitting there. So opportunity met his vision, and the bread slicing machine is now in everyone's homes, or the results of it. So it was somebody from a discipline they didn't belong in, bringing a new idea, because when people are fixed in a lane, everything is always the same. When you come in from outside, innovation happens, because that's when it's exciting.
Yeah, I mean, this has been such a rich conversation. You'll notice I've gone so many times, which I can't.
I get excited. I love this. So.
I'm passionate about this, and it's just a pleasure to have someone like you who's inspiring. And Des left a comment. She's our MVP today, along with Frank, actually, maybe co-MVPs. I see Alex Lee showed up. Thank you to everyone for your time and attention, for your great energy that you brought. Des said, a reader lives 1,000 lives before he dies. The man who never reads lives only one. Joe is this quote in the flesh. Instead of reading, he's in all these lanes. His story is captivating and inspiring. So what a compliment. And I actually want to ask you more questions.
Thank you, Des.
Joe, it doesn't hurt to end a little early. We could go on and
whatever you want, man.
Candy shop. But maybe we can end on this. You're living an inspiring, rich life. Do you have any thoughts to just riffing on like what living a full, rich life really looks like? I'm sure your generalist perspective informs
Sure.
that. I want to hear that from you. What does that look like?
Absolutely. To me, what a full, rich life is waking up every day and being excited about whatever it is you're going to do that day. And setting your own mind to knowing that what you're about to do is something you're choosing to do. Even when I had a job and I worked for people, it was the same. I woke up, but I knew I was choosing to do that. I wanted to do it. But then when I came home, I found something new to learn, something more exciting for me to do, whether it was crafts or it was studying something or reading, learning. I set my own destiny. And to me, a fuller, richer life is a life that you choose to control, that you choose to make as large as you want it to be, and you choose to make it as full as you can imagine it being. And to me, that's why I push multidisciplinarity, because the more you're willing to learn, the more you're willing to commit, the more you're going to wake up, do what you want to do. And every night when you're going to go to bed, you're going to be able to answer what I call the magic question, which is, what did I learn new today? What did I learn today that I didn't know yesterday? And what am I going to learn tomorrow? Because that is what makes your life full and exciting and fun.
Oh,
That's my answer.
I'm going to turn that into a short form content clip that I will share after, but I do have two more questions because we still
Go ahead.
Minutes. Come on. So for those of us, and I feel like all of us have been here in some flavor, who are living out of integrity in the sense that maybe we're doing a job that we're miserable in, or we're in a relationship that we're miserable in. Sometimes we fall out of integrity and out of touch with ourselves. What would you share to give someone the courage to take the leap to actually pick up the pen and start authoring a truly authentic, inspiring life and kind of the life you're describing?
The only thing you have to fear is yourself. Okay. Don't worry about what people think. Don't worry about falling apart. I have learned so much from my failures. I have learned so much from defeat. And look, I'm a 63-year-old guy sitting here talking to you saying, no, my life has not been perfect. I've had some really crazy stuff happen. I've had some bad stuff happen. Just let it go. Just let it happen and decide that you're just going to move on and grow. Because otherwise, you're going to get stuck in a hole and you're going to run in circles.
Amen. Come on. Okay, last question, and then we'll probably do some calls to action. What's next for you? Because you still got a lot of life left to live. Even though you have such wisdom, you've learned so much, you've done so much. What's next? I mean, we got the book, The Generalist Advantage. What else?
Well, that's the cool part about being me. I don't have any idea. I don't know. I don't care. I'm going to mess up everybody because I've gotten where I am with very limited goals. I just decide I'm going to do something and do it. And I don't really want to tell you I know where I'm going next because I don't. Am I going to continue speaking? Am I going to continue advising, consulting, being a professional mentor, whatever it is I'm doing? I don't know. Am I going to continue it? Yeah, because I love it. It's what I love doing. But what am I going to do different tomorrow? What am I going to change and decide to tackle next week? I'm sorry. That's next week's problem, not today's problem.
Yeah, man, that is a paradigm shift. What I love is that you're focused on taking action and not so much holding a goal so tightly, but holding it loosely, because that openness, it seems, leads to unpredictably beautiful things. Maybe even a goal or a experience that is greater than anything you could have even conceived with your limited experience before. So, oh my gosh, what a great note to end on. And guys, make sure if you do one thing, look back, scroll back into the videos that post afterwards and scan that QR code. I'm going to do the same so that we can join.
Here, I'll pop it up again while we're sitting here.
I'd say that's the main call to action, guys, because then you'll start getting a flow of insight and wisdom and creativity from Joe. You'll be able to figure out when his next book's coming out. And hey, I encourage you to put yourself out there and maybe send Joe a LinkedIn request. I know he's a busy guy. He's advising CEOs, consulting, speaking, but I've seen myself like, Joe, thank you for your mentorship. We haven't even known each other for a long time. So, hey, extend that olive branch, have the courage, send him a LinkedIn request, and definitely get plugged in with the newsletter.
You got it. And I'll respond. I respond to good people, not sales pitches.
Yeah. And remember, if we learned a lot about sales, like being a generalist, you only need to know 20% of the technical information. And hey, let's not be salesy. Let's be authentic. Let's be empathetic, and the rest will follow. So guys, to your success in tech sales, and being a generalist and in life, happy selling and happy living. Connect with Joe, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers, y'all.